And hi, Peggy. This is, oh, look at Masha and Johnny going to town on some millet. Which one is Masha and which one is Johnny?
Johnny is the yellow one in the foreground, the male, and Masha is the female, and she's blue, and she's a little bit behind him. And they're celebrating today because today is Quarantine Freedom Day.
Woohoo! For our viewers, when Mickaboo policy, because birds can hide illness, so a bird can look perfectly healthy and actually be fairly sick. So when we bring birds into a new home that has other birds, we quarantine for 6 weeks. And that period of time really gives things to settle out. And we do that to ensure that we're not bringing some new illness into other members of the flock who are healthy. Let's start with some Budgie Basics. I can see that, like many Budgies, they love their millet. But these guys look like, well, what do they eat besides that? Millet is kind of a treat.
Well, they came to me eating just seed. And so we worked on adding a little bit of pellet to the diet, which it's always hard unless if you really count how many pellets they get to see if they're really eating it. And then I moved to switching them to Nutri-An cakes. And at the beginning, it was like, oh, we don't have much interest in this. And suddenly, all of a sudden, they started eating it. So they're kind of interesting because a lot of budgies, you know, the sun comes up, they eat in the morning, they eat in the evening because that's what they would do in the wild. And these guys eat a little bit in the morning, but they're big eating in the evening birds. With a little bit of suspicion that sometimes they eat after they get covered and they go to bed at night. I'm not 100% sure about that, but so they've switched to Nutri-An pretty well. And Nutri-An is a mix of a seed and pellet.
Right, excellent. And what are their living requiremements? How big a cage does a pair of budgies need, and what kind of toys do they like?
So budgies for a pair like this, the smallest size we tend to recommend is 18 by 18 by 30. And hey, none of that. Johnny, bad.
Not bad to the budgies. They're having a great time right now and being really, really cute.
Yeah. They heard they were going on the internet and they wanted to know which channel they were going to be on. An 18 by 18 by 30 inch flight cage gives them room to fly back and forth. And also, while they're in quarantine, a smaller cage makes it, if there is something medically wrong that they need to go to the vet, it's easier to catch them and put them in a carrier to take them to the vet if they need to go. And it's also good for, getting to know them better. Once they get past this stage, then, there are flight cages that are about almost a little bit longer than this, but they're like twice to 2.5 times as tall. And that gives you a lot of room too to put in the toys. So these guys like their mirrors. And I think it's because for whatever reason, they really seem like they like that extra companionship.
Right.
They play with the little ladder that has a mirror on it. And they do play sometimes with the other toys, but these guys are odd that they like to play when I'm not in the room. So I don't always see what they're playing with. It's how things are moved. They like to dislodge their food bowl and drag it around the bottom. So we've had to clamp that. And they like to climb through rings. And the younger the birds too, the more they play.
Right.
And
do we know about how
and these two are? Yes. They were. We received them from the person who surrendered them, and they had purchased them about 1.5 years ago from a pet store, essentially. So they're probably somewhere around just under 2, I would think.
Right, that makes sense.
So they're yes.
Now budgies need friends, and they really need other budgies around. And Mickaboo's policy is that we won't adopt a single budgie into a home that doesn't have, one other budgie. We like to adopt them in pairs. Right. And often birds are what we call bonded. That is, they form close relationships, and we don't want to split that up. It looks to me, and I'll ask the question, but it looks like these two are bonded and that we wouldn't want to separate them because of how stressful that would be.
Right. We believe they've been together since they were at the pet store. So that's all they know is each other. And yes, they are. If you notice, they're feeding each other. And when I kind of hollered a little bit at Johnny, well, we're working on trying to control some of their hormone impulses because we don't want them mating and laying eggs. Laying eggs is very hard on the female, and they are hormonal right now. And we're trying to prevent mating and eggs and, of course, baby birds. So we're trying all the things of making things the days longer, or the days shorter rather, and the nights longer, so they have less daylight to simulate, winter coming, and those types of things, so that we don't encourage that behavior.
Right, and for our viewers, as Peggy said, producing and laying eggs is actually pretty hard on birds physically, and it can be a major health problem. So it's easiest when birds are separate, then they don't have the opportunity. But when you have a male-female pair like this, where they have the opportunity, then it becomes really important anyway, to keep them from getting hormonal and thinking that it's time for breeding season. How do they interact with people? Do they step up? Do they talk? Or would you say they're tame?
No, they're not tame, although Masha, the female, is actually surprised a little more brave than the male. And someone else had fostered them for a very short time when we first got them, before I got them. And she indicated that the female was a little more timid. And it's like, to me, he goes and hides, and she'll at least look at me. And she did land on my finger one day, but I think it was more by accident than intent. But they don't, if you go in to clean the cage and you do things, it's not like they panic fly all over the place and back and forth, which some birds do. Right, so they've been around. So they've been around people enough that they don't do that. And I think with a little work, they will step up and do that.
Right. Again, some socialization and training. Do they currently step up? Just
no, they don't step up.
Okay, not even for millet. So they need a little work.
Yeah.
Have they been around other pets or children?
It was funny because last night I was in here and they were quiet as anything, and they heard my dog's collar rattle out in the hallway, and all of a sudden they started chirping. They are not around children, so I don't know how they would be. I think because they are that little bit fearful still, or a little timid. Probably small children, it probably would not be a good idea. But I think older children, somebody who's not going to stick their fingers in and try and poke them and that kind of thing, but are very patient, I think would probably be fine.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, they're really sweet. They're budgies. They matured in cute when they went to school.
Yes, they did.
So in our last few minutes, what else would you want to share with potential adopters, or want them to be aware of with these two sweeties?
Well, Masha is currently molting, so I'm finding little blue feathers absolutely everywhere. And I live in Daly City, and I asked the vet one time how often budgies should molt or birds should molt, and she says here they molt whenever they want to. So whether it's a function of I ran the heat a couple of days and it got warm and they decided it was a good thing to do, I don't know. But I have other fosters as well, and they're molting as well. So maybe it's time of year.
It is time of year.
But excuse me?
It is time of year.
It is, okay. But I think these birds would be great with the family, with older kids. They would definitely like to be adopted together, as long as the adopters are aware that they're going to probably have to deal with hormone issues.
And
going forward.
Keeping from having places to nest and those sorts of things.
Right. No nesting materials, nothing to chew on that they can build it. I have to make sure the cage papers are perfectly flat, or they shred them. They manage to pull them up.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Peggy. And hopefully you two, Masha and Johnny, you'll be finding your forever home soon. All right.
Hope so.